Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to House Committee on Science. Ooh, there we go. Welcome, sound system. We're going to get started in about 1 minute, so just go ahead and get situated. To members, if you don't have a copy of the rules, raise your hand, and Ms. Brooks will get you a working copy. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank our guests today, to the House Committee on Science and Technology. Today is an organizational meeting. We're going to go over the rules, have one proposed change from last year. Talk about those if there's any discussion, and then Chair later today will be at a point to entertain a motion on those. Then we'll talk about some of the subject matter we want to address this year in our hearings, and if there's any other discussion, take it, and then we can conclude sort of at the pleasure of the committee. Having said that, anybody else that still needs a copy of the rules? Okay, so we'll stand by till we have those. So as we've distributed copies of the rules, again, by way of introduction, for those who are members of the committee, before we get started, I'd like to kind of go around and have everybody identify themselves. I'm going to put, I thought about to be on a more humorous note, every member of the committee to share a unknown fact, but we're not going to go there today. So, but what I would like everybody to, for the purpose of the committee, I'd like to start with Representative Marin and kind of work down the committee and have you represent yourself, or identify yourself, where you're from, and any facts about you want to share, and we'll go around as an introduction to our members of the committee. Representative Marin.
Okay, I'm on. Representative Pedro Marin, I represent the 96th District, representing part of the cities of Norcross and Duluth in Gwinnett County. Facts about me. I'm an islander, born and raised in an island, so I think that's a good fact. I'm sorry for the voice. I'm going through a laryngitis. So,
thank you, Representative. Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heath Clark. I represent District 147, which is in Houston County, and been serving on the Science and Technology Committee since my first session back in 2015, and look forward to continuing to serve this year.
Floor Leader Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Burt Reeves, Cobb County, District 34. This is my first time on the Science and Technology Committee, and despite the fact that I went to Georgia Tech, I'm probably the least science and technology person in the House of Representatives. So I'll be able to offer that position as we go through legislation.
Representative Reeves, I think you have a pretty strong Facebook game, though, if I'm following things.
I wouldn't know.
No, but the man can sing. That's good.
Thank you, Scott.
Representative Scott Turner, District 21, which is in Cherokee County, about 45 minutes north of here. I've been on this committee since 2013.
Hi, good afternoon. Todd Jones. I represent House District 25, which is predominantly South Forsyth County with a little bit of North Fulton. This is my first year on the committee. I'm excited about it. It's also the 30th anniversary of my time in tech, if you can call 1989 tech. And so super excited about that, except for a stint in law school where I decided what the heck, become a lawyer too. I've been in tech, I guess, for 28 years.
I'll defer to you, Todd.
Jeff Jones, District 167, Southeast Georgia, Glenn, McIntosh, and Long counties. Starting my third term, and this is my second term on this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Representative Sherry Gilligan. I have the wonderful privilege of representing the 24th District, which is the city of Cumming in the west end of Forsyth County. And if you're ever in need of finding the most beautiful place on earth, just come up there and we'll be glad to show you around. I am a native of Georgia, and when I went up in the D.C. area, I worked for a while in the intelligence field, and when I was with the CIA, I was in the Department of Science and Technology, so DS&T. This is my second year on this committee, and I'm looking forward to what we'll be taking up this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Representative David Dreyer from House District 59. I live about a mile from here. This is my second term on this committee, and I may have taken a little grief as a freshman on this committee last term. I feel like even as I'm not a freshman, I still will this term, but I'm really honored to be here, and I enjoy the work we do.
I apologize for being late. Sorry about that. My name is Jody Lott. I am from Columbia County, which is just outside of Augusta, and this is my first opportunity on this committee.
Welcome. And up front, Sandra. Okay.
Representative Sandra G. Scott, served District 76, Clayton, Henry County. This is my 9th year. I'm going into my 9th year on this committee. I'm glad to be here.
I am State Representative Michael Smith. I represent House District 41 that covers parts of Marietta, Smyrna. Thank you.
I'm Mary Margaret Oliver. I represent an $8 billion entity called Emory that is the #2 bioengineering school in the country for its partnership with Georgia Tech on medical devices.
Hi, my name is Donna McLeod, and I'm representative from District 105, of course, part of Bethlehem, part of Decula, part of Lawrenceville, part of Grayson, and part of Loganville. I'm a 29-year veteran in science. I actually am a chemical engineer, and for the last 12 years, I've been doing consulting for medical device companies to make sure they stay in compliance with the FDA.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Viola Davis, and my House District is 87. That is Stonecrest, City of Stonecrest, City of Tucker, and also the City of Pine Lake. And I also represent primarily Stone Mountain and Tucker. This is my first year on this committee, and I am a critical care nurse with over 22 years experience.
Welcome.
My name is Beth Moore. I am the newly elected representative for House District 95, which is mostly Gwinnett County and a little sliver over in Fulton. I live in Peachtree Corners, which is home of Atlanta Tech Park, which in its heyday was considered the Silicon Valley of the South. That's where I have my district office now. So this is obviously my first year serving on this committee, and I'm happy to be here.
Welcome to the committee. Appreciate you guys introducing yourselves again. Chair, Representative Thompson, could you push your button there, Mabel?
Yes, thank you. I'm very shy. My name is Mabel Thomas. I can see how you can miss me, I'm so shy. But I'm Mabel Thomas. I represent City of Atlanta and Fulton County, but my area goes from Ansley Park back to the west side of Atlanta. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative Thomas. Again, Chairman Ed Setzler. I've had the pleasure of chairing this committee for a few years. I represent Northwest Cobb County, essentially Kennesaw State, up to that northwest corner of Cobb. work in the architecture and engineering business. Have the ignoble title of having been a physics degree in college, and I guess that it was on that basis they approached me about this job, and it's been a fun chairmanship. For those who are new to the committee, just as a kind of an overview, it's a multidisciplinary committee, and a lot of the work we do, we probably do as much work out of session as in session. And our task is really to delve into interdisciplinary technology-related issues and flesh out if legislation is needed or where there's a potential policy response by the state. Many cases we're led to conclude rightly that there is no policy response. Other times, as in the case with autonomous vehicles that this committee started working on in 2013, after about 4 years, we had advanced that discussion to a place where in 2017, Representative Jones and others worked very closely in advancing a bill that ultimately passed through the House Transportation Committee, but aided by a couple years of work on that subject, passed what I think is industry would say is the premier autonomous vehicle law in the nation. We're really the only state in the nation that has a true, authentic, actual autonomous vehicle law that's fully fleshed and across the areas of the law, and that's a lot of that work is members of this committee being involved in that. We looked at the privacy issues related to UAVs and drones. We did a study around commercial space flight, which led to Representative Spencer's Commercial Space Flight Act 2 years ago, which created tort conditions that made manned space flight workable in future years. Those are the kinds of things have typically started in this committee. We don't have any assigned legislation now. But there are a couple subjects that I do plan to take up with some speakers this session. Georgia Tech's been very kind to send folks over, as have our commercial partners over the years. And with that, I wanted to just say if there's any topics that members of the committee want to talk through and have possibly considered by the committee this year, identify those soon. I've got a couple folks that will speak to some things they've asked us to address this year. But before we do that, I would like to address your attention to the rules. I think most folks have had a chance to look through those. Reading through them, are there any questions about the rules as presented from last year? There is one change in the quorum number. Last year, our quorum, having been a smaller committee, our quorum was 6 of 15. Now we have 25 members. I wanted to increase the quorum number to 8. I just feel like it's more in keeping with that larger committee. But that's really the only change in the rules from last year's committee rules. Any discussion on the rules?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Marin.
We're gonna change number 1 because it says 6,
Yeah.
8 on the parentheses.
Yeah. My version says 8. I'll entertain that as a friendly amendment. It should read a quorum for the committee shall
so it
be
has 6.
the word 8
Okay.
members.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you entertain a motion, I would like to do the motion.
Any further discussion on the rules? Hearing none, we're in a posture, chair's in a position to receive a motion if there is one. Is there a motion? Chair recognizes Representative Marin for a motion.
Motion to pass the House rules for committee 2019-2020.
A do pass motion from Representative Marin. Do I have a second? Second. Have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the committee rules with the first line being clarified shall be 8 members, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, they're adopted. Hang on to these, and we'll also make sure that you have a committee roster. If there's anything you want to bring before the committee, I want to make sure everybody has a chance to contact committee members easily to facilitate that. Got a question? Is that Representative Oliver? Chair recognizes Representative Oliver.
I want to congratulate you and the work this committee did last year on the voting machine issue. I thought that was a very helpful detail. For those of you that weren't here last year, we spent a lot of time on it. And my question to you is, would we be better off today if we'd passed that bill that we had last before us, this committee on voting machines?
Yeah, Representative Aller, I appreciate that. It was our goal, and again, just by way of reference, appreciate that, Representative Aller. We started last August. We had 4 hearings from August through December of taking on the issue of voting machines. And I don't want to overstate that, but I do think the approach we took to understanding what technology is there, we looked at, the first one was cyber vulnerabilities. What are the real true vectors? of risk for our voting systems. And part of that was to see what's there. Are there, were there risks? And much of it was to see where there might be this perception of risk that there wasn't risk. So it was really fleshing out what was real and what was not real. And then we looked at some technologies, because as the state moves towards a decision, it's not a matter of choosing between infinite choice. There is a finite number of choices and options. I think we did that in an admirable way. And I think, to the lady's point, our goal as a committee was recognizing things voting are historically governmental affairs bills, but from a science and technology perspective, it was a science and technology question that lived there. So that was, I think we took the opportunity to do that. And it's the chair's opinion, this is simply my own, that our effort last year to bring a bill that would have moved us towards a touchscreen voter experience with a hard, actual primary physical ballot that's hand recountable would have been the best solution. I think the bill we finished up with last week of session would have been great for our state. I think the politics got very complicated last year, unfortunately, and sort of devolved on us. But what was a bill that myself and my second sponsor was Dean Smyrie, it was something we were moving forward with because of the work of the committee.
Just for the benefit of the freshman, it was a very good discussion. It was a bipartisan discussion at that time, and as this issue has become more tense in the last year, I just have been thinking back about all the variations of that bill and whether it would have been better to be prospective rather than now retrospective. But it's comment on the value of this discussion of this committee is what I really wanted to express. Because there was a lot of engagement at that time that was a bipartisan engagement over what was really available from the vendors, which was helpful to me at that time.
Yeah, big decisions are very difficult to make, and the schedule and the sort of the frenetic nature of a legislative session. I think some things just take that time, and our goal was to not be doing things that takes a lot of deliberation and time and 3 and 4 hour hearings during session. It's best done out of session, and that's I would anticipate we would do that this cycle as well. So, thank you. Before I get into a couple things we're going to take up here this year topically, Chair would like to recognize Vice Chair Jones. There's some things you wanted to speak to that were subject matter you thought we should address possibly this year with some speakers?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I think overall, when we start thinking about what we're doing here on the Science and Technology Committee, we keep hearing this idea that Georgia can become the Silicon Valley of the East. I actually have an idea that maybe the Silicon Valley can become the Atlanta of the West. But frankly, there's a big separation between us and the Silicon Valley. I think first and foremost, it's culture. In the Silicon Valley, it's always yes and here in Georgia, it's no but. And we can do a lot, I think, with this committee in terms of our ability to speak to experts and bring them in and really start showing people that we have momentum toward the idea of creating a true IT ecosystem. I think the second thing is I think the committee has the ability to at least be one part of the leadership that allows us to become the most innovative state in the union to do business as opposed to the best state to do business. I do not believe that to be slicing. I don't believe that to be a thin hair slice, guys. I think if we're the most innovative state to do business, that says that we are truly creating a barrier to entry. We're creating higher wage jobs. We are creating a better place to live. And we do that, frankly, by creating an amazing ecosystem around technology and innovation. So to that end, some of the things that the chairman and I have discussed, and I know I've discussed it with a few of my colleagues on this committee, we think a lot about 3D printing. If you don't know it, we have a significant number of Georgia companies, and not just the Kias and the Deltas and the UPS guys. I'm talking all the way down to the mom and pops and the Georgia Tech incubators that are going hard into 3D printing. We need to ensure that anything from the regs that we have that Lynn Riley and the Department of Revenue looks at, all the way to what is the environment and culture that we can create in order to make us the leader of 3D printing. 3D printing, okay, no worries. It's a great question. So the idea, Representative Oliver, is that we are able to take 3D CAD drawings, if you're familiar with CAD drawings on a 2D level, okay, think of 3D printing as basically taking materials at either a very high temperature or sometimes just at the most micro level molecular structure and taking them and combining them to create, are you ready for this? Jet engines. Your iPhone, the glasses on your head, maybe not the earrings because I think those are pearls. I can't do that. But at the end of the day, nearly everything that we use, may it be appliances, may it be your car, we're going to be most likely looking at a 3D printing. And this way, it won't be your traditional manufacturing.
I mean, for an example, if this were an auto part, for example, that used a very high strength composite, you could take the printer and take the model of this and create this part in 30 minutes on site without having to ship it and have it delivered. It's the creation of items. It could be used. It could use a metal alloy of some kind, but it's the creation of items through a process that just layers on piece by, and the piece sort of forms, and as that becomes faster and can use more sophisticated and stronger materials, it's going to become more and more part of our supply stream and manufacturing process.
So when you think about Delta today, if you are not caught in one of their larger airports like Salt Lake, Atlanta, etc., you have to wait for the part to be shipped to you. There's going to come a time where they're just going to, quote, manufacture the part at that particular airport. The DOD is going to give the initial supply at the line to our soldiers, and then they'll, quote, print or manufacture what is needed as opposed to assume what is needed. So at the end of the day, think of it as just-in-time manufacturing. So how does Georgia take the true leadership position of the 50 states as opposed to being a follower?
I mean, right now, if you were to look across the academic environment, Carnegie Mellon's probably the world leader in 3D printing. Tech's very strong. We have the #1 industrial engineering program in the world, and have a very strong materials engineering program too. And a lot of this is industrial process, a lot of it's materials. So as Vice Chairman Jones and I have talked, do we have the educational programs in place at the university level? Do we have them in place at the technical college level? Do we have regs in place? Are there, what are the elements? And we might find that we need to do nothing. In other cases, it might be a leadership move to encourage the regents or some universities to take some action. So that's...
No worries. So what we know is that many of our universities have strands going against this. Private companies have strands. Public companies have strands. So how do we take all that energy, if you think about if everyone's going north, but you got a little northwest, a little northeast, and get everyone pointed due north? So I think a hearing or a set of hearings so that we can learn more, I think makes sense. The second one, and sorry for the time, Chairman, the second one is air taxis. We've already conquered autonomous vehicles. You may think it's Jetsons. It's not. Larry Page funded the Kitty Hawk. I would encourage you to Google it. It's called the Kitty Hawk. It is right now being tested in New Zealand and Dubai. We have the opportunity to be the very first state in the union to pilot the air taxi here. And that would be, I think, another demonstration of a halo brand that Georgia would be able to demonstrate true leadership in technology as opposed to, let's say, being a follower in technology. And I think the third one that the chairman and I discussed is we continue to look at privacy issues and thinking about the smaller our phones get, the smaller electronics get, how is it that we can ensure privacy in private conversations? Not in something like this, obviously, but when two people are having that conversation and ensure privacy. So we're going down just the lines of, is there a technical solution, but is there also possibly, say, a reg or a legal solution in terms of solving, the recording issue when you are in fact expecting privacy and you don't actually get privacy? So those were the three things. Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, to Vice Chairman Jones' point, some states are two-party states. Most states are one-party states in terms of a very prominent recorded discussion in the last 12 months in Georgia. Led to some second thinking about that is, where do we want to be? So Vice Chair Jones has done some work on where's a two-party state, what's a one-party state, where's the law moving in that direction in terms of a reasonable expectation of privacy. You talk about inside of homes. In the curtilage of your own home, do you have a reasonable expectation of privacy? If you invite someone into your home, that they can be using a device that you don't know about, you didn't invite the device in necessarily, is that part and parcel to inviting recording in your home as opposed public setting, obviously public. But those are the kind of things that he asked me to possibly invite some legal experts, and I mean we've got some of the best attorneys in the Southeast. here within miles of the Capitol that we'll start to delve into some of those things perhaps. I've got number 9. Is that?
So there's two things that I'd like to see this committee also address. Is climate change. I've actually got some emails from some folks from Savannah just talking about just how climate is affecting that area as well. And waste. Is there any technology to help us reduce our waste? Because obviously most of the stuff that we're generating is not biodegradable. So is there ways for us to look into making sure that we are reducing waste or getting rid of waste? Because we're getting a little bit, I think we're getting to the point where we're out of control.
Yeah, we did have a pretty strong, I won't call out the speaker, we did have a pretty strong waste to energy presentation, I think 3 years ago.
Okay.
Some companies that are piloting some operations with waste to energy technology, and I think they tend to work well in a pilot setting, but being able to do this at scale becomes more difficult. But I appreciate that as a. Yeah, that's right. So, any other discussion from members? I will say, to add on to Vice Chairman Jones, I do want to raise the question of again, it's a multidisciplinary thing. As my wife was going through withdrawals last weekend because her iPhone 5 went down. That a phone over 5 years becomes sort of part of you, and having to go to an iPhone 10 was very difficult for her. And as you take on new technology, you ask to shut the. There's no button on it. And when there's a setting on it that says it doesn't require a button push, typically it requires a button push to actuate something. But when technology doesn't require a button push, like you saw, if any of you watched the Super Bowl, Harrison Ford's dog apparently was ordering dog food with a bark and gravy and so forth. As we have technologies in our lives that are voice actuated, where do our laws relating to privacy, 16-5-2, and others, how does it relate to the permissions we give a device to be using the recording versus not? I don't posit, by the way, that this is listening to me or that some faint, very, very common social media app is listening to me. I don't believe that, although some claim it. But what I want to understand is, where do our laws stand relative to that? That what kinds of permissions are required to turn on the speaker of a device, and then where does that cross the line into an invasion of privacy? What does our current law prescribe? What is the legal status of that? And we'll have in the next 3 weeks we'll have a speaker that can help us understand that, because again it is the intersection of technology and law and common practice, and just sort of understanding again, it may inform action, it may inform that we're right where we need to be. But I think it's something that I've come to wonder about, and I think it's something we can address this year. So any further questions? Hearing none, I'd like to welcome you guys back to Science and Technology Committee. We do have a standard time of 3 to 5 p.m. in this location every Tuesday. We'll try to get out notifications to you by the end of the week if there's not going to be a hearing. So again, Diana is my assistant. She is dialed in on this committee, so she'll be a point of contact for any communications about hearings. So with that, thank you for being here. Thanks for everybody for joining us. We stand adjourned.